Today I am talking about histamine intolerance and the symptoms that too much histamine in the body can cause that most people probably don't put down to histamine. These are things like anxiety, depression, period pain, and weight gain, and a whole lot more. So stick around and I'm going to have a look at histamine and what it does in our bodies. And as I said, I suspect there are a lot of people out there being medicated due to histamine issues and suffering due to histamine issues and being locked up in psychiatric wards due to histamine issues. And I think that that's a shame. Hi there, my name is Sue. Welcome to my channel. If you've not been here before, I have been eating a carnivore diet for almost 2 years. And throughout those 2 years, I have had some amazing changes to my health, amazing beneficial changes to my health, because I was in quite a bad way when I started on this diet. But I've had quite a journey with all sorts of things going on to do with oxalate dumping and histamine, and like I've had a lifetime of gut issues and anxiety. And so these are things that I was hoping were going to resolve on carnivore, and I'm gradually getting there. But I've been realizing kind of more and more that histamine has been playing a big part in what's been going on with me. And just recently, I've had an experience that really made me start looking into histamine even more. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today is what I'm learning about histamine and what you may want to know about histamine as well. So a lot of the symptoms of histamine, I actually realised that I've been affected with for a lot of my life. And I'm going to talk about why I think that is a little bit further on in the video. But some of the symptoms that histamine can cause, I mean, we all kind of attribute histamine to things like allergies, hay fever, runny nose, itchy eyes, even hives, itchy skin, that sort of thing. But there's a whole lot of other symptoms that histamine can actually cause that I didn't realize until I started delving into this further. So histamine can cause things like shortness of breath, asthma, itching, hives, runny or stuffy nose, sinus congestion, headaches, migraines, period pain, generalized body pain and aches, nausea, vomiting, irregular heart rate, arrhythmia, tachycardia, flushing, low blood pressure, difficulty regulating body temperature, dizziness, diarrhea, constipation, flatulence, fatigue, high blood pressure, swelling of tissues, inflammation, and even weight gain. So a lot of those symptoms are things that I've experienced. A lot of those symptoms are things that other people experience. I know that, like, for a lot of women who experience PMS, you think about the symptoms of PMS, you've got period pain, you've got swelling, you've got mood changes, you've got depression. All of these things can kick in the week before a woman gets her period, and all of these things can be attributed to histamine. When it comes to menopause and perimenopause, you've got the hot sweats and the weight gain and the inflammation and increased aches and anxiety and all of these things, all of those symptoms can be histamine as well. So while these changes, this is just with regards to women, while these changes are happening in a woman's body and they're putting it all down to hormones, histamine can actually be playing a part in these as well. And the hormones, the estrogen, affects histamine too. So this is quite a complicated subject that I'm starting to get a little bit of a grasp of, but I'm by no means an expert. But this is just what I have found, and I wanted to talk about this in this video. There's a lot to unpack in this, so it's possibly going to be a longer video than what I normally do. But stick with me because I think that this is a much bigger problem than most people realize, and I think that it's a big problem within the carnivore community as well as outside of the carnivore community, obviously, as well, because histamine affects lots of people. All right, so there is more to histamine than most people realize. The experience that I had about a week and a half ago, I spoke about, I think, in my last video. And what happened was I'd been on a high-fat carnivore diet for about 7 weeks. And when I first started on the high-fat carnivore diet, I was doing really well, and then things just gradually started to deteriorate. And what I've been noticing was, but I hadn't kind of thought about it until this happened a week and a half ago, was that I was noticing that I was kind of more moody than normal. And my appetite was just increasing and increasing and increasing. Initially, the first 2 or 3 weeks, I felt really good. My mood was great. I was feeling really well. I was feeling really satiated. I did a video 2 or 3 weeks in where I was just talking about how satiated I felt, because I have always had a big appetite, and that really hasn't changed on carnivore either. So I mean, that's part of my weight issue, is that I have times where I'm just hungry all the time. And so I kind of figured that my ghrelin and leptin response was broken, and blah blah blah, like people talk about. But what I'm realizing now is that histamine actually has been playing a huge part in that. And so after 7 weeks on the high-fat carnivore diet, as I said, things were kind of deteriorating. And then I had one morning where I woke up, I decided that I was going to change things up a bit, and I was going to start intermittent fasting again, because I had been eating 3 meals a day as well while I was on high-fat carnivore. So I can't remember, I think I had eaten less meals the day prior, or maybe even a couple of days prior. I can't remember the exact timeline. But this day I got up in the morning, wasn't having any breakfast, and so I was feeling great, really, really good in the morning, calm, peaceful. I said to hubby, I feel really good, and the feeling of peace in my body and calmness is kind of not really been my natural state, at least for a lot of years. I think potentially maybe ever. And so when I feel like that, it really kind of stands out. And I just thought to myself that morning, oh, I wish I could just feel like this forever, because it's such a blissful way to be. And then I had lunch. I had a client coming in later on that day for a massage. I had lunch. I had 2 lamb chops for lunch that had been dry brining in the fridge for 48 hours. So they had been building up a bit of histamine, obviously. I had those, and I noticed really quickly after lunch that my mood changed. And I was feeling irritable and grumpy. And then within, a little bit more time, I'm sitting there doing some stuff on the computer. I was editing a video, I think, and I could feel myself feeling really agitated and kind of wired and just not good, And then my client arrived. Prior to my client arriving, I had to go to the loo, to the toilet a couple of times, not with diarrhea, but just loose, and my belly wasn't feeling great. And then my client arrived, and I got 15 minutes into her massage, and I'm anxious, and I'm having a panic attack, and I needed to go to the toilet, so I had to excuse myself and go to the loo. It took about 40 minutes into her massage for that all to finally calm down. So I'm thinking to myself, what just happened? The difference between before lunch and after lunch was so marked, like the whole experience in my body and my mind was just totally different from prior to lunch to after I ate those 2 lamb chops. And so I thought to myself, it has to be histamine. It has to be histamine. And so I started delving more into histamine and the effects that it can cause. And that's what this video is about today. So I'm going to ask you to stick with me, stay to the end of the video, because at the end of the video I'm going to talk about what I've been doing and the amazing changes that I have noticed over the last, it's been probably 5 or 6 days, maybe a week, I can't remember, since I've realized that this has probably been histamine, and I've been actively working to lower my histamine levels. The changes have just, they're blowing my mind, to be honest. And so I'm going to talk about that at the end of this video. But in between times, I'm going to talk about what I've learned and things that you might need to know if you have got some symptoms going on, because it may just be histamine. So histamine does good things, but when it's too high, it causes problems. Histamine intolerance is what is commonly called. It's not really intolerance. It's not that your body's intolerant to histamine generally, but it's just that there's too much histamine. And once that histamine is too high and your bucket overflows, because that's basically what happens, is the histamine is supposed to be there, but when it gets too high, it's like a bucket overflowing. Once that bucket overflows, that's when it causes problems in your body. The histamine is made by basophils and mast cells in your body, and they are found in all basically all of the tissues, I believe, in your body, and are intrinsically part of your body's immune system. Histamine is a signaling chemical that our immune systems release to send messages between different cells. So it is known for allergy symptoms, but has important functions like regulating your sleep-wake cycle and your cognitive ability, which is why when you take antihistamines, they often make you sleepy and drowsy. It has countless body functions and plays a key role in your body's inflammatory response. So it's supposed to happen. You know, if you sprain your ankle and your ankle swells up, there's histamine that's taking a part in that, making that happen. And that inflammation is part of your body's way of healing things. And so histamine is really important, and it's supposed to be there. The effect histamine has depends on which histamine receptors it binds to. So in our bodies we have H1, H2, H3 and H4 receptors. Okay, so these are receptors that are found in different areas of the body that histamine binds to and to have different effects. So you have H1 receptors throughout your body, including in the neurons and brain cells, smooth muscle cells of your airways and blood vessels. Activation of H1 receptors causes well-known allergy and anaphylaxis symptoms. So these can be things like itchy skin, expanding of blood vessels, so vasodilation, low blood pressure, increased heart rate, flushing of the skin. They can cause narrowing of your airways, pain, and the movement of fluids throughout blood vessel walls, so vascular permeability. H1 receptors also regulate sleep-wake cycles. They regulate food intake and appetite, body temperature, emotions, memory and learning. So, you know, my experience the other day where all of a sudden my anxiety kicked off and I was having a panic attack, that emotion side of things from those H1 receptors is what was actually playing a huge role there. So H2 receptors are mainly in the cells of your stomach, smooth muscle cells and heart cells. And activation of H2 receptors is responsible for stomach acid secretion. So that helps with digestion, stimulation of mucus glands in your airways, vascular permeability again, hypotension, so that's low blood pressure, flushing of the skin again, headaches, tachycardia, and bronchorestriction, which is that tightening up of the airways. H3 receptors are found in neurons and are involved in the function of the blood-brain barrier and regulate the release of histamine. And chemical messages such as dopamine, norepinephrine, acetylcholine, glutamate, and GABA. And H4 receptors are found in bone marrow and play a role in the formation of new blood cells and the regulation of immune system and inflammation. So, as we know, histamine can cause all of these different symptoms and more. Like the symptoms that I've listed at the beginning of this video aren't all of them. That's just some of them that I've found and listed here. So what causes high histamine in the body? There are multiple different things that can cause high histamine. Gastrointestinal disorders. So, you know, things like IBS and different bowel diseases and gut issues, SIBO, that sort of thing, are all part of what can contribute to high histamine levels in the body. This is probably one of the biggest things. If your gut isn't well, then you are more likely to have issues with histamine. Some medications can temporarily block DAO. So DAO is the enzyme that breaks down histamine in the body. And so if you haven't got enough DAO in your body, then histamine is likely to be higher. Bacterial or fungal overgrowth, as I said, so if you've got SIBO, so small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, if you've got small intestinal fungal overgrowth, that can all contribute to higher histamine levels in the body as well. And mold toxicity. So this is pretty much all of these things apart from the medications is all stuff that was going on with me. So I had a problem with mold toxicity as well, and that can definitely play a part in histamine issues, and it can also play a part in small intestinal fungal overgrowth and that sort of thing, and gut issues and everything else as well. So your diet too. So eating aged foods. So this is things like alcohol, fermented foods, Avocado, eggplant, and spinach are really high in histamine, apparently. Egg whites can be a problem, especially if they're raw or undercooked. Processed and smoked meats, canned fish generally, I think if it's older, builds up histamine quite quickly, and aged cheeses, that sort of thing, can all play a part. Now, if you don't have a histamine issue, if your gut is really well and your body's really healthy, then eating these foods probably isn't going to be a problem, unless you're eating them a lot and too often. But if your body isn't well, if your gut's not well, and you've got these other things going on, then they are probably going to cause you some problem. If you have a reduced ability to break down histamine, if you've got a lack of DAO enzyme, as I said, that is going to cause a problem. And one of the things that can cause that is medications, as I said, but then there's also gene mutations. So there's gene mutations. This is things that you've inherited from your parents that can cause your body to produce either less DAO or dysfunctional DAO. So in my case, what I learned when I went and looked into all of this, and then I started looking at my genetics, because I've got my genetic information, is that I actually have 3 genes that can potentially be a problem here. So I have the DAO gene, which is, I'll put it on the screen, it's RS1015691, and then I have the C and the T versions in there. I think they are alleles, I think that's what they're called. And so this gene can cause problems with DAO and histamine. And so that, I suspect, has probably been a problem for me for most, maybe all of my life. I'm not really sure. And then I also have the warrior gene. So the warrior gene, which is RS6323 TT. So this gene reduces monoamine oxidase activity. And so there are different versions of this gene, and that, while it doesn't have a direct effect on histamine, it can have a roundabout effect on histamine, apparently. And then the MTHFR gene variations can also contribute, because if your folate, if your body's ability to convert folate is a problem, then that can also contribute to histamine issues as well. And so I have all 3 of those, and so I kind of think that this is why, when I look back, I'm suspecting that histamine's been an issue at least all of my adult life, maybe longer. So all right, so I'm going to read you a short story here. So this story I first read years ago. It was in a book that my mother brought home from Scotland. So my mum had asthma, and then my mum ended up with really bad IBS after that trip to Scotland, though. It was quite a while after that. But mum had, health issues as a child, asthma and eczema and all that sort of stuff. And the asthma carried on. It was quite severe when she was an adult. When I was a child, she no longer has asthma because of her changes in diet and kind of looking after her health and that more as she got older because of the IBS. And so, but asthma was quite a big problem for her. And when she was in Scotland, her cousin, who also had asthma, so her cousin now, she's almost housebound, has been for years with ME. So there's a lot of this genetic stuff, I think, running through our family's genes. And she also has asthma. She also has pyroluria, the same as me. So I was diagnosed with pyroluria at 50. And so it was her that gave the book to mum. And then a few years later, I'm not sure how long later, I actually read the book, and it had a marked effect on me, this story. So I'm just going to read. I couldn't find the book. Mum and Dad don't have the book anymore, but this is from a website that I found, and it's telling the same story. So I'm just going to read it to you. It's just short. So this is Joanna's story, and it's from Richard McCaness's book, It's Not All in the Mind. In 1976, British psychiatrist Richard McCaness claimed that many of the mysterious, chronic and intractable ailments suffered by patients, including mental health problems, were caused by reactions to food, especially processed foods and synthetic additives. He began with the case of one of his patients at Park Pruitt Hospital in Basingstoke, Joanna. 28 years old, had suffered from attacks of irritable, depressive, tense, and violent behaviour ever since the birth of her third child in 1967. During the following 6 years, she had been admitted to Park Pruitt 13 times, often because of the danger she posed to her children, whom she had neglected and subjected to physical abuse. She was also a threat to herself, slashing her forearms with any nearby object during her most disturbed phases, as a way of relieving, if only temporarily, the unbearable tension and irritability mounting inside of her. Although her upbringing had not been ideal, Joanna's mother had beaten her as a child, and they had slept in the same bed until she was 18 years old. Psychotherapy had not proven to be efficacious. Joanna's history was presented for a final time at a case conference consisting of psychiatrists, psychiatric social workers, medical students, the consultant psychiatrist, and McManus himself, and her prognosis for recovery was thought to be all grim. Since Joanna had already been treated with every known combination of psychotropic drugs, as well as several courses of electroconvulsive therapy, most felt that psychosurgery was the only solution, meaning that her 3 children would most certainly be taken into care. Then McManus spoke up, speculating that Joanna might be suffering from a particularly severe case of food allergy. Although the group generally felt that the approach was bound to fail, the consultant was not eager to send Joanna to the neurosurgeons, and as a last result, left her in McManus's care. McManus's first step was to place Joanna in Park Pruitt's intensive care unit, where she fasted for 5 days. After the fast, during which time her behaviour had improved considerably, she was fed specific foods one by one. Following the introduction of each food, Joanna and 2 independent observers assessed her reactions, and McManus soon identified a number of foods that were likely triggers for Joanna's reactions, specifically coffee, egg, porridge, veal, and bacon. Following a series of double-blind tests, McManus determined that these foods, as well as chocolate and cheese, were responsible for her symptoms and removed them from Joanna's diet. Before long, Joanna was discharged, taken off all medication, and within months, her general practitioner enthused that Joanna has made a remarkable improvement. She is happy, gay, euphoric, sometimes almost hypomanic in her hearty enjoyment of life. She goes out to work, cares for the children without harming them, looks after her house, and generally seems to be almost back to her old self before this illness first attacked her. McManus added that she continued to experience good mental health apart from 3 short readmissions when she became ill through breaking her diet, lapses which were due to the addictive element in food and chemical allergy. So in the book, when I read the book, it talked about, I think it was maybe her first relapse, because this is the one that I remember, is that she went to an afternoon tea and she had black tea and sandwiches, and she had a relapse, and within a very short time, it was about half an hour, and next thing she was back crazy again and ended up being readmitted. And so when I read that story, I actually have to wonder whether histamine was part of her problem, or if not the whole problem. When you look at those foods, they're all high in histamine, apart from the porridge and the bread that was in the sandwiches, if they were a problem when she had the relapse, when she was readmitted. All the rest are high histamine foods. You've got the cheese and the bacon and the egg and the veal and chocolate. I mean, the caffeine in coffee and chocolate can cause histamine problems, and coffee itself potentially can as well. Some people are sensitive to coffee, and that can cause histamine issues as well, which I think is my case as well. So then my question was, can gluten cause histamine issues? And looks like it. There's new research that suggests that it may be so. And if that's true, then eating gluten may cause histamine type symptoms in some people. So surprise, surprise. There are new studies also indicating that non-celiac gluten sensitivity may actually be due to histamine intolerance. So, I mean, I was never tested for celiac, but I definitely had issues with gluten, and so that it could just be histamine. I mean, my mother was tested for celiac, and it came back negative, but she was definitely had sensitivities to gluten. She has sensitivities to eggs. It could be histamine. So there are other things that can cause problems, histamine problems, or that can block DAO production. So chocolate is one of those, which was in hers as well. Chocolate actually used to make me depressed when I was younger. That was something that I noticed right back in my late teens and 20s. I wasn't a big chocolate eater, but I did notice that if I ate it, the next day I'd be in tears. I'd be depressed. So was that a histamine reaction? Citrus fruits are histamine liberators, so they don't contain histamine, but they liberate histamine in the body, so they can cause problems. Food additives and black tea, yerba mate, and coffee, due to the caffeine, is a big part. So the caffeine can cause histamine issues. So, if you are having histamine problems, for those carnivores who are having a lot of histamine issues, but are still drinking coffee, the caffeine can be an issue. And for some of us, I think that I'm one of those, we can be sensitive to coffee itself. Coffee is actually fermented. The coffee beans are fermented, so they can be a problem as well. That's something that I did not know until I started looking into all of this. Look it up. Most of them are fermented, and that's why they can have mold issues as well. That's why coffee beans can have mold issues, because they are soaked in vats of water and fermented to break down the shell of them, I think it is, and make them easier for easier processing, basically. So the other thing that I came across while I was looking into all of this is that some anxiety and antidepressant and psychiatric medications block the H1 receptors in the brain, or H1 and H2, maybe some of them in the brain. And so then I'm thinking to myself, well, is this one of the ways that some of these drugs work? Because if they do, then obviously the pharmaceutical companies know that histamine is potentially a problem with anxiety and depression and some of these psychiatric illnesses. So then the question has to be asked, why are they not teaching doctors that this can be a thing? If somebody's having issues with anxiety or depression and they go to the doctor, they just want to whack them on drugs, and where it could just be what they're eating, or it could be that they have a genetic defect that's causing higher histamine issues. And if they learned about that, there are ways to manage and control that through diet and different herbs and things like that. So this is it's typical of mainstream medicine, but it's just the way that it works. But like when I started looking into this, tricyclic antidepressants inhibit the H1 receptors in the brain, so that's obviously one of the ways that they work. And then this was from a research study on clozapine, which is a drug that they give to patients with schizophrenia. And it says histamine H1 blockade is one of the more prominent actions of the multi-receptor acting antipsychotic clozapine. It is not currently known how much of this H1 antagonism of clozapine contributes to the therapeutic or adverse side effects of clozapine. So, I suspect that maybe the blocking of the H1 receptors is at least part of the way that these drugs work. And I think it's a shame that people aren't being treated the correct way to try to, to see if lowering histamine would help with some of their symptoms. So what can you do, if you've got histamine issues? I mean, you may or may not have genetic stuff going on like I have. But if you've had gut issues and things like that, if you're on a carnivore diet and you've had gut issues, it may take a while to resolve those gut issues. And while you can get rid of a lot of your symptoms on carnivore, the actual problem may not be resolved. So this is something that within the carnivore community, there's this whole belief that just eat meat and it'll all get better. And like I've heard Dr. Chafee saying multiple times, just eat meat and your microbiome will sort itself out. That didn't happen in my case, all right? So if it hasn't happened in my case, it may not happen in your case as well. I've actually had to do a SIBO protocol to get rid of the SIBO and the SIFO and work on other things to get my gut health to where it is now, where it's actually really pretty bloody good. But, so there may still be something going on there, that your diet is, masking basically is what I'm saying, with your gut health, because even I was listening to a video the other day with Michaela Peterson. So Michaela Peterson has eaten the premier carnivore diet, the lion diet, for 5.5 years, red meat, salt and water, but she's not healed. She cannot introduce any other foods without a return of her symptoms. And that's the thing, is like, if your body is healed, you should be able to reintroduce some other foods, and she can't do that. So eating meat has not healed her body. All it's doing is masking her symptoms. And that's obviously potentially the case with other people, because I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are like, I can only eat red meat and whatever, and I can't introduce anything else, even other carnivore foods, without a return of symptoms. So there's other things there going on, I think. And I know that some people will probably disagree with me, but that's what I think. And from my experience absolutely points to that, because I was still having a lot of gut issues right up until doing the SIBO protocol, and then that is what resolved them. But I still have histamine issues. So is my gut completely healed? I don't know. I just know that I don't have diarrhea anymore, and I don't have any obvious gut symptoms. But this, I want to talk about the things that you can do and what I'm doing to lower my histamine levels. So the first one is to heal your gut. So if you suspect you still have gut issues, if you know that you have gut issues, then I would absolutely advise looking into SIBO, SIFO. Look at I have videos on what I did to heal my gut. And if you don't have a healthy gut, you don't have healthy anything. The gut is the center of everything, and if your gut isn't working properly, you're not digesting your food properly, you're not assimilating your nutrients properly, nothing is going to function as well as it should be if your gut's not healthy. So that's absolutely probably one of the most important things to get sorted out. So reduce problem foods and drinks is the other thing as well. So restrict or eliminate aged foods. If you are on a carnivore diet, try to eat your meat as fresh as possible. Don't bring it home, put it in the fridge, bring it home, put it in the freezer, and then cook it from frozen or defrost it just before you're going to cook it. I have stopped dry brining my meats in the fridge because I had got into doing that, and that was obviously part of my problem, and my histamine levels were just getting higher while I was on that high fat carnivore diet. Get rid of the histamine producing drinks, so that's anything with caffeine in it. Decaf may still be fine, but yeah, get rid of the histamine producing drinks. So get rid of any teas that can contain caffeine, so that's black tea, green tea, yerba mate. I had been drinking green tea for the past probably 8 or 9 months, maybe longer, since I started on the SIBO protocol, because that was one of the things that was advised to help to grow the mucus barrier on your small intestine. So that's why I was drinking that, and I was actually really enjoying it, but now I've had to stop. Yerba mate I really like as well, but that is a big problem with histamine too. So you can also consume foods and herbs that help to clear histamine from the body. So within the carnivore side of things, kidney, beef kidney contains DAO. So if you like kidney, great, go for it. If you don't like kidney, there are supplements with desiccated kidney that you can buy. Any supplements that I talk about here, I have got some links to some below. So you can check those out. So kidney supplements, if you don't like kidney, I don't like kidney. So I was taking kidney supplements for a while. I stopped. I may start them again. I do have some kidney in the freezer. I'm going to try and eat it, but I'll see. Never used to like it. So there are also studies that show that natural unrefined salt helps to lower histamine. So not iodized salt. If you are using iodized salt, I think from what I've seen, that actually has the opposite effect. It can actually increase histamine levels. So you want to stay away from all that processed foods. You want to stay away from processed foods anyway, because the additives in those can increase histamine. So if you're not on a carnivore diet and you are eating just an ordinary diet or a keto diet or something, you want to stay away from any processed foods, and in particular any that have got any kind of additives in them, and any kind of any salt in them, because it's going to be just that crappy iodized salt. you do not want to consume that. You want to consume some Celtic salt or some Himalayan salt or Redmond's real salt, one of these salts that are unprocessed, because they can help to lower histamine. The reason I actually looked that up was just before I did this video, because I was inspired to put some salt into my coffee this morning, into my decaf. So I was having a decaf, and I had a couple of decafs yesterday, and they did affect me. And this morning I thought, I have this intuition that just really works sometimes. And I thought, I wonder if I put salt in my coffee, if that will make a difference to how it affects me. And so I've got some Sole made up, which is just really concentrated salt water. And so I put a teaspoon of that into my coffee and drank that. And while I was drinking it, I looked it up to see whether salt lowers histamine. And sure enough, it can help. So getting plenty of salt is important. There are herbs that can help. So ginger is one of those. Black seed and black seed oil can help. And I'll pop a link to my favorite black seed oil below this video. There are combination herbal therapies that are designed to block histamine. So I'm taking one currently called Histablock by Nature's Sunshine. I'll link to that below as well. And also neem. So neem leaf can help to lower histamine. So as I said, I suspect that this has all been potentially lifelong for me. There's lots of things that are kind of associated with histamine, and estrogen dominance is one of those, and that was me, like right from when I hit puberty. When I look back and I learned about estrogen dominance, I realised that had been part of my problem right from the get-go. And weight gain, lipedema, which I've just kind of really come to terms with that I actually have. So lipedema is associated with histamine as well. Gut issues and anxiety and depression. So they've all been things that I've been kind of dealing with. And then the whole IBS, diarrhea and stuff throughout my life. And so this has all been something that's been ongoing for me, and I really suspect that histamine has played a huge part in maybe all of my health issues all of my life. So what I've been doing since I really realized this, after having that experience a week and a half ago, whenever it was, I have stopped aging any meats. I've stopped eating the other foods because I had been eating some olives, and I had even had some avocado, which I hadn't had the whole time I'd been on carnivore. But once I was on the high fat carnivore, I thought, I might have some avocado. And I've been eating a bit of that, and so avocado is high in histamine as well. I have actually reduced, I haven't been really adding anything much in the way of fat to my diet again now, so I'm on a kind of higher protein, lower fat carnivore diet again. And because the fats can cause histamine to go higher as well, apparently. So I have done that at the moment as well, and my fringe is annoying me, it keeps getting in my eyes. I am taking some supplements. As I said, I'm taking the Histablock, and I'm taking neem leaf, and I am making tea every day. The first thing I started doing was making tea with fresh ginger, some fennel seeds, some black seeds, fennel seed and black seed, because they all help to lower histamine, especially ginger. And so I've been drinking at least a couple of cups of that a day, and just trying to make sure that my egg whites are cooked. It doesn't always work, but trying to make sure that my egg whites are cooked. Not aging any meat in the fridge. Just being a bit more mindful about what I'm putting into my body, and taking the herbs. And what I'm finding is, this is just blowing my mind, is that so the last probably most of this week working, like I've had no bowel issues, no gut issues. I have had no anxiety. I've been just really calm. Even when my clients, like normally I get up tight first thing in the morning, especially before my first client, and then sometimes after lunch as well. And there's been nothing. The kind of, I have these weird OCD things that go on, and that's all been really, really settled. And they've been lifelong, different ones, but that's been something I'll get really obsessive about. Certain things, like years ago, it used to be making sure all the PowerPoints were turned off before I went to bed, and of late it's been about making sure that all the doors and the windows are locked, and I've noticed that has all kind of calmed down. So there's been no anxiety. My mood has been really good, and the other thing that's changed is my appetite. And so I've had days where I just haven't been hungry, and I've been fasting again. I've been fasting, and just doing, like, when I was working through the week, I was just doing one meal a day, or I'd have a little bit of something, maybe some eggs when I finished work, and then an hour later I'd have dinner. And I'm finding when I'm eating dinner, I'm actually struggling to eat enough to make sure that my calories are high enough, that I'm not starving my body. So I'm kind of trying to keep myself around 1,500 calories a day, and I'm finding that I'm having trouble eating enough to do that. But I found yesterday, as I said, I had 2 decafs yesterday when we went out, and I had one after another, and they did affect my belly. And after the second one, we were in a cafe, and I'm sitting there thinking, I have to go to the toilet, but it's settled. But what I found was that my eyes got a little bit itchy, and my appetite was higher. When we got home, I was hungry, and then I was hungry for tea, and then I was hungrier again this morning. So just kind of paying attention to that. There's a little bit of caffeine in the coffee, but like I said, I suspect that I'm actually sensitive to the coffee itself, not just the caffeine. And I've kind of thought that for quite a long time. So I really need to stop drinking the decaf as well. And so I think when I run out, I will probably stop drinking it. But I didn't drink any during the week while I was working, and I was just, everything was so different, so different. So this is really, as I said, it's blowing my mind. It is making me realize that I may finally be able to sort all these health issues out and get myself in a place where I'm living in a body that is comfortable to live in, because that's all I want. For me, the carnivore journey isn't about being anal about removing all plants and just being carnivore. This is about health for me, and it's about being comfortable in this vessel that I'm living in this life, because I've never been comfortable in it. And if I can finally get myself to a place where this is comfortable and this is comfortable and there's not all this stuff going on, then I've reached my goal. I may or may not need to stick with some herbs and things, depending on, going forward, depending on what all changes. Things are getting better. I don't know whether I can turn those genes off or not. From my understanding, genes get turned on by lifestyle or trauma. And I think I've mentioned before that I suspect that may be part of my problem as well. I've actually got a book coming that I've ordered on how the amygdala and limbic system work, because I want to be able to undo some of that if I can, and learn ways to do that. And so, yeah, I think that all plays a part. And so I'm hopeful that I might actually be able to turn these genes off and then be rid of these problems forever. But yeah, if not, then I just might need some herbs and things to help keep things lowered from at times. Just depending on what's going on and what I'm eating and everything else. So yeah, so that's where I'm at. That's what I've learned about histamine. As I said, it's a lot to unpack, and there's more. I'm probably going to dig more into this, because it's really fascinating me, the symptoms that histamine can cause. And as I said, I suspect there are a lot of people out there being medicated due to histamine issues, and suffering due to histamine issues, and being locked up in psychiatric wards due to histamine issues. And I think that's a shame. If you've got any comments or questions, pop those below and I'll get to them as soon as I can. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe, like and share with anyone that you think might be interested. chances are, if it's not you, you know someone out there who may be having some of these symptoms that are caused by histamine. And yeah, I thank you very much for watching and listening, and I will talk to you again another day. Goodbye for now.